The Ferrari's engine made a sound like a dying animal. Marco Santino slammed his palm against the steering wheel and watched steam pour from under the hood. He was on a deserted highway somewhere between Phoenix and nowhere, the sun dropping toward the horizon, and his phone had no signal. He got out and kicked the front tire. The car was worth more than most people made in 5 years, and now it was useless metal. A small voice said, "Your car is broken." Marco turned. A boy stood 10 feet away, maybe 6 years old, holding a toy car that looked exactly like Marco's Ferrari. The kid wore a blue shirt with a race car on it and dirty sneakers. His hair stuck up in different directions. "Where did you come from?" Marco said. The boy pointed toward a dirt road that branched off the highway. "I live over there. I was playing. Then I heard the noise and came to see." Marco looked around. No other cars. No houses visible. Just desert and scrub brush and the setting sun. "You live out here?" "Alone. With my mom. She fixes cars." Marco laughed once, sharp and bitter. "Your mom fixes cars. She's really good. She can fix anything." "Kid, this is a Ferrari 812 Superfast. It's not some pickup truck your mom patches up in her garage." The boy shrugged. "She fixed Mr. Henderson's Corvette. And the police chief's motorcycle. And even a semi-truck once." Marco ran his hand through his hair. He had a meeting in Los Angeles in 18 hours. The meeting would decide whether he lived or died. Literally. He'd made promises to people who didn't accept excuses. And those people expected him to deliver $2 million in cash that was currently locked in the trunk of this dead car. He needed the car running, or he needed another way to LA, and he needed it now. "How far to your house?" he said. "Not far. Maybe 10 minutes walking." Marco weighed his options. He could wait here for a car to pass. He'd been on this road for 40 minutes and hadn't seen one. He could walk until he found a town. Who knew how far that was? Or he could follow this kid and see if his mom was actually capable of helping. "Fine. Take me to your mom. Before we continue, let me ask you something. Have you ever made a split-second decision that completely changed your life?" Marco just made his. And what happens next will prove that sometimes the people we meet by accident are the ones who save us on purpose. If you're curious about life-changing stories like this, hit that subscribe button now, because you won't want to miss how this unfolds. Trust me, this story gets deeper than you think. The boy grinned and started walking. Marco grabbed his jacket from the car and locked it. He followed the kid down the dirt road, expensive shoes getting dusty, thinking about how everything had gone wrong in the past month. His business partners in Chicago had turned on him. The FBI was asking questions. And Vincent Terranova, the man Marco owed $2 million to, had made it clear that failure meant a shallow grave in the desert. The boy talked as they walked. "My name is Danny. What's yours?" "Marco." "That's a cool name. Are you rich?" "That car is really expensive." "How do you know what a Ferrari costs?" "I like cars. I know all of them. The 812 Superfast has a V12 engine and 789 horsepower and goes 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds. Marco looked at the kid with new attention. "You know cars. My mom taught me. She says if you understand how something works, you can fix it when it breaks." They walked in silence for a minute. Marco saw a small house ahead, paint peeling, surrounded by old cars in various states of disassembly. A woman stood next to a Chevy Impala, leaning under the hood. She wore jeans and a tank top, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Grease stained her hands and forearms. Danny ran ahead. Mom, there's a man with a broken Ferrari." The woman looked up. She was younger than Marco expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes that assessed him in 2 seconds. "Danny, I told you not to wander off. I heard a noise. His car broke down on the highway." She wiped her hands on a rag and walked over. "I'm Sarah Reyes. You need help. Your son says you fix cars." "I do. It's a Ferrari. I've worked on Ferraris before." Marco doubted that but didn't argue. "Can you at least take a look? I'll pay whatever you want." Sarah studied him. "You're not from around here." "Chicago. Long way from home." She looked at the direction he'd come from. "How far is the car?" "Maybe half a mile back on the highway." She nodded. "I'll get my tools." "Danny, go inside." "But Mom." "Inside. Now." The boy trudged toward the house. Sarah went to a workshop area and started gathering tools. Marco watched her work, noting the efficiency of her movements, the way she selected exactly what she needed without hesitation. "You really fix cars for a living out here?" he said. Someone has to. Nearest mechanic is 40 miles away. Business must be slow. Slow enough that I notice when expensive cars break down and men in $1,000 shoes show up at my door. Marco said nothing. Sarah loaded tools into a bag and grabbed a water bottle. Let's go look at your car. They walked back to the highway. The sun was lower now, maybe 30 minutes from setting. Marco felt the weight of time pressing on him. Every minute here was a minute closer to missing his deadline. Sarah reached the Ferrari and circled it once, running her hand along the hood. She popped it open and examined the engine. Marco stood back and let her work. After 5 minutes, she said, "Your radiator blew. Probably been leaking for a while. You just didn't notice until it finally gave out. Can you fix it?" "Not here. I need to tow it back to my place." "How long will that take?" "To tow it? An hour. To fix it? Depends on the damage. Maybe 3 hours, maybe more." Marco did the math. That would put him on the road by midnight if everything went perfectly. He could still make LA by morning. "Do it." Sarah looked at him. "This is going to cost you." "I said I'll pay." "How much?" $5,000. Marco almost laughed. She had no idea how much money was in the trunk of that car, or how much he'd pay to get it running. "Fine. 5,000. But I need it done tonight." "Tonight?" Sarah shook her head. "That's asking a lot. I'll make it 10,000 if it's ready by midnight." She studied him again, and Marco saw the calculation happening behind her eyes. $10,000 was probably more than she made in 6 months. "What's the rush?" she said. "I have a meeting. It's important. Must be very important." "It is." Sarah closed the hood. "I'll get my truck." She walked back toward her house. Marco stood next to the Ferrari and pulled out his phone. Still no signal. He thought about Vincent Terranova and the $2 million and what would happen if he didn't show up. Vincent didn't make threats. He made promises. Sarah returned 20 minutes later driving a beat-up Ford F-250 with a towing setup. She positioned it in front of the Ferrari with practiced ease and hooked up the cables. Marco watched her work, impressed despite himself. "You've done this before," he said. "Few hundred times." She finished securing the Ferrari and gestured for Marco to get in the truck. He climbed into the passenger seat. The interior smelled like oil and coffee. Sarah started driving, pulling the Ferrari behind them. "So what's in Chicago?" she said. "Business." "What kind of business?" "Import-export." "That's vague." Marco looked at her. "I prefer to keep my work private." "Fair enough." She drove in silence for a moment. But people who pay $10,000 to fix a car overnight usually have interesting reasons. Or they're just in a hurry. They reached her property. Sarah backed the truck up to her workshop and started unhooking the Ferrari. Marco got out and looked around. The house was small but well maintained. Old cars surrounded it like sentries. Through a window, he saw Danny watching them, his face pressed against the glass. Sarah rolled the Ferrari into the workshop and turned on overhead lights. The space was organized and clean, tools hanging on walls, parts labeled and stored. A professional setup. "You can wait inside the house if you want," she said. "This is going to take a while." "I'll stay here." "Suit yourself." She went to work. Marco watched her remove the damaged radiator, examine the engine for additional problems, measure and catalog what she needed. She moved with confidence, her hands steady and sure. An hour passed. Sarah's phone rang. She answered it while holding a wrench. "Hey, Paula." "No, I can't tonight. I have a job." "Yeah, emergency repair. I'll call you tomorrow." She hung up and kept working. Marco said, "You're giving up your evening for this. You're paying me $10,000. Still, you could have said no." Sarah didn't look up. "I don't say no to work. Not out here. Every job matters." Another hour passed. Sarah installed a new radiator she pulled from her parts inventory. She refilled the coolant, checked the hoses, tested the connections. Marco found himself relaxing slightly, watching her work. There was something calming about seeing someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Danny appeared in the workshop doorway. "Mom, I'm hungry. There's leftovers in the fridge. Can Marco eat with us?" Sarah looked at Marco. "You hungry?" Marco realized he hadn't eaten since breakfast. "Yeah, actually." "Come on then." They went inside. The house was small, living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms. Pictures on the walls showed Danny at various ages, Sarah holding him, smiling. No pictures of anyone else. Sarah heated up chicken and rice. They sat at a small table. Danny talked about cars and school, and a lizard he'd found yesterday. Sarah listened patiently, asking questions, correcting his table manners gently. Marco watched them and felt something strange, a kind of longing he didn't usually let himself feel. "You have family in Chicago?" Sarah said. "No. No one. My parents died when I was young. No siblings." Danny looked at him with wide eyes. "That's sad. It was a long time ago." Sarah served more rice. "What about friends?" Marco thought about his associates in Chicago. The men he did business with. The people who'd turned on him the moment things got difficult. "Not really. That sounds lonely. It's practical. Less complicated." Sarah met his eyes. Or more complicated in different ways. They finished eating. Sarah went back to the workshop. Marco helped Danny clean up, then sat in the living room while the boy showed him his toy car collection. Danny knew everything about each one, make, model, year, engine specs. The kid had a gift. "Do you want to be a mechanic like your mom?" Marco said. "Maybe. Or maybe I'll design cars. Or race them. Dream big. That's what Mom says. She says you can do anything if you work hard enough." Marco thought about his own path. The choices he'd made. The shortcuts he'd taken. "Your mom is smart." Sarah called from the workshop. "I need to test something. Marco, can you come here?" He went to the workshop. Sarah sat in the driver's seat of the Ferrari, her hands on the wheel. "Turn the key when I say." She did something under the dash. "Now!" Marco turned the key. The engine roared to life, smooth and powerful. Sarah listened for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, shut it off." The engine died. Sarah got out. "Good news. The radiator fix worked, and I don't see any other damage." "Bad news, you threw a belt too." "I'm replacing it now, but I want to make sure everything else checks out before you drive off." "How much longer?" "Another hour. Maybe less." Marco nodded. Sarah went back to work. He wandered outside, looking at the desert under the night sky. Stars everywhere, more than he'd ever seen in Chicago. The air was cool and clean. His phone buzzed. Signal. A text message from a number he didn't recognize. "Tick-tock, Marco. Vincent is getting impatient." Marco deleted the message. He thought about the money in the trunk. The meeting in LA. The life he'd built on foundations of sand. Pause for a second. Marco is standing at a crossroads between his dark past and a chance at something real. We've all been there. That moment where you have to choose between what's comfortable and what's right. If stories like this one remind you why making the hard choice matters, do me a favor. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Because what Marco decides next will either destroy him or set him free. And honestly, most people won't see the twist coming. Don't be one of the people who misses it. Samedi. Danny came outside. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, kid. Just thinking." "About what?" "About choices. About whether I'm doing the right thing." Danny sat down next to him. "My mom says when you don't know what to do, you should think about what kind of person you want to be. Then do what that person would do." "That's good advice. She's really smart." "I'm starting to see that." They sat in silence, watching the stars. Marco felt something shift inside him, like a door opening to a room he'd kept locked for years. He thought about his parents, who died in a car accident when he was 12. He thought about the foster homes, the streets, the men who'd taught him that power and money were the only things that mattered. He thought about the person he'd become and the person he might have been. Sarah emerged from the workshop, wiping her hands. "All done. Want to test it?" Marco stood. They walked to the Ferrari. Sarah stepped back while Marco got in and started the engine. It purred perfectly, all the power and precision restored. He revved it once, twice. Everything sounded right. He got out. "You did it. Told you I could." Marco reached for his wallet and pulled out a stack of hundreds. He counted out $10,000 and handed it to Sarah. She took it, her expression carefully neutral. "This is the most I've ever made on one job," she said. "You earned it." Marco paused. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why do you live out here? You could make more money in a city." Sarah looked toward the house, where Danny's silhouette was visible in the window. "I grew up in Phoenix. My ex-husband was there. When things fell apart, I needed somewhere he couldn't find us. Somewhere safe. This place was cheap and far away. I built a life here. He was abusive. Yeah, for years. I finally got smart and left. Good for you. It wasn't easy. Some days I wonder if I made the right choice, dragging Danny out here away from everything." Marco looked at the house, the workshop, the quiet desert. From what I can see, you made exactly the right choice. Your kid is happy. He's smart. He knows you love him. That's more than most people get. Sarah smiled, and Marco saw something in her face, strength and sadness mixed together. She'd survived something terrible and come out the other side. She was brave in ways he'd never been. You should get going, she said. You have a meeting to get to. Yeah. Marco hesitated. Thank you. For the repair. For dinner. He stopped, not sure how to finish. For treating you like a person? He nodded. Something like that. Sarah touched his arm briefly. Drive safe, Marco from Chicago. Whatever you're running toward or running from, I hope you find what you need. Marco got in the Ferrari. He started the engine and pulled out onto the dirt road. In the rearview mirror, he saw Sarah standing in the glow of the workshop lights, watching him go. He drove back to the highway and pointed the car toward Los Angeles. But he didn't accelerate. He sat there, engine idling, thinking about Vincent Terranova and the $2 million in the trunk. He thought about the meeting and what would happen after. More deals, more threats, more running. He thought about Danny and Sarah and the life they'd built in the middle of nowhere. Marco made a decision. He pulled out his phone and found the number for Raymond Chun, his lawyer. Ray, it's Marco. I need you to arrange something. Vincent Terranova's mansion sat in the hills above Los Angeles, all glass and steel and expensive views. Marco drove up the winding driveway at 8 in the morning, exactly on time. He parked the Ferrari and grabbed the duffel bag from the trunk. 2 men met him at the door, Vincent's security. They patted him down, checked the bag, nodded. One of them spoke into a radio. He's here. They led Marco through the mansion to a study. Vincent sat behind a mahogany desk, 60 years old, gray hair, cold eyes. A man who'd built an empire on intimidation and violence. Marco, Vincent said. I was starting to think you wouldn't show. I'm here. With my money? Marco set the duffel bag on the desk. Vincent unzipped it and looked inside. $2 million in cash, exactly as promised. He smiled. I'm impressed. I thought you might try something stupid. I keep my promises. So you do. Vincent zipped the bag closed. Which means our business is concluded. You've paid your debt. Actually, there's one more thing. Vincent's smile disappeared. What thing? I'm out. I'm done with all of this. Done? Marco, you don't get to be done. You work for me until I say otherwise. I'm not asking permission. Marco met Vincent's eyes. I paid what I owed. That was our deal. Now I'm walking away. Vincent stood up. You walk away when I tell you to walk away. Do you understand what I could do to you? Yes. I understand perfectly. But I'm still leaving. One of the security men stepped forward. Vincent raised a hand to stop him. You're serious about this? Completely. Vincent studied Marco for a long moment. Why? Because I met someone who reminded me that there are other ways to live. Better ways. Someone. A woman. A mechanic and her son. Vincent laughed, sharp and mean. You're throwing away everything over some random people you met on the road? Not throwing away. Walking away. There's a difference. Vincent's expression hardened. I could have you killed right now. One word and you don't leave this room. You could. But you won't. Why not? Because I paid my debt. Because I never betrayed you. And because deep down, you respect people who stand up for themselves. Vincent sat back down. He drummed his fingers on the desk, thinking. Finally, he said, You've got balls, Marco. I'll give you that. So we're done. We're done. But if you ever change your mind, if you ever come back into this life, I own you. Understand? I understand. But I won't be back. Marco turned and walked out. He half expected to be shot in the back, but nothing happened. He reached the Ferrari, got in, and drove away from the mansion. He drove all the way back to the highway where his car had broken down. The drive took 12 hours. Marco stopped once for gas and coffee. He thought about what he was going to do next, where he was going to go. For the first time in 20 years, he had no plan. It felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. He reached the turnoff to Sarah's place at sunset, the sky bleeding orange and red. He drove down the dirt road and saw the house and workshop ahead. Sarah's truck was parked outside. He pulled up and got out. Sarah emerged from the workshop, surprise on her face. Marco, what are you doing here? My meeting didn't take as long as I thought. Is everything okay? Yeah. Actually, everything is better than okay. He paused. Can I talk to you? Sure. Come inside. They went to the house. Danny ran up and hugged Marco's leg. You came back. I came back. Sarah made coffee while Danny showed Marco a new toy car. Marco sat at the small table, feeling more at home here than he'd felt anywhere in years. Sarah sat across from him. So what's going on? I quit my job. The import-export business? Yeah. Turns out it wasn't the right fit for me. Sarah smiled. Good for you. The thing is, I need a new plan. I have some money saved. Not a fortune, but enough to start over. Start over doing what? Marco took a breath. I don't know. But I was thinking maybe I could stick around here for a while. Figure things out. If that's okay with you. Sarah set down her coffee cup. Marco, you seem like a decent guy. But I don't really know you. And I have to be careful. For Danny's sake. I understand. I'm not asking to move in or anything like that. He struggled for words. Yesterday, when I was here, I felt something I haven't felt in a long time. Like I belong somewhere. Like there might be a different way to live. What did you really do in Chicago? Marco met her eyes. Things I'm not proud of. I worked for dangerous people. I did what they told me to do. I made a lot of money and burned a lot of bridges. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. Not yet. But give me a chance to prove myself. I'll get a job. I'll rent a place nearby. I'll stay out of your way until you decide whether I'm worth knowing. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Danny tugged on her sleeve. I like him, Mom. He's nice. Danny, adults are talking. But he is nice. And he needs friends. He said so. Sarah looked at her son, then at Marco. You really want to stay in the middle of nowhere? I really do. There's not much here. No fancy restaurants or nightclubs or whatever you're used to. I'm not looking for fancy. I'm looking for real. Sarah stood and walked to the window. She looked out at the desert, thinking. Finally, she turned back. Okay, you can stay. But if you cause any problems, if you bring any danger to my door, you're gone. Clear. Crystal clear. And you find your own place. I meant what I said. I don't really know you yet. I will. Thank you, Sarah. She shook her head. Don't thank me yet. You might hate it here after a week. Marco smiled. I don't think so. The next morning, Marco drove into the nearest town and found a small apartment above a hardware store. He paid 3 months' rent in advance. The place was tiny, 1 room, a bathroom, a kitchenette. It was perfect. He bought basic furniture and supplies. He stopped at a diner and asked about jobs. The owner said the ranch 30 miles north was hiring. Marco drove out there and talked to the foreman, a weathered man named Jack who looked at him skeptically. You ever worked on a ranch? Jack said. No. Ever worked with your hands at all? Not really. Then why should I hire you? Because I'm a fast learner and I'll work harder than anyone else you've got. Jack studied him. You running from something? Running toward something, actually. That's a better answer. Jack spit tobacco juice into the dirt. Okay, I'll give you a week trial. 6 in the morning to 6 at night. Minimum wage. If you can't hack it, you're done. I'll hack it. Marco showed up the next morning at 5:45. Jack put him to work mending fences. It was brutal, heat and sun and wire that cut his hands. By noon, Marco's back was screaming. By evening, he could barely stand. But he finished the section Jack assigned him and asked what else needed doing. Jack looked at him with new respect. Go home. Get some rest. You did good today. Marco drove back to his apartment, showered, and collapsed into bed. Every muscle hurt. He'd never been so tired in his life. It felt amazing. He worked at the ranch all week. Jack kept giving him harder jobs, hauling feed, mucking stalls, breaking a young horse that nobody else wanted to deal with. Marco learned fast. He listened to the experienced hands, asked questions, didn't complain. By Friday, Jack offered him a permanent position. You're tougher than you look, Jack said. I've been tested before. Just in different ways. Well, you're hired if you want it. I want it. Marco settled into a routine. He worked at the ranch 6 days a week. On Sundays, he helped Sarah in her workshop, learning about engines and transmissions and how to diagnose problems. Danny tagged along, chattering about cars and school and everything else on his mind. Slowly, Sarah relaxed around him. They had dinner together sometimes. They talked about their pasts, hers in Phoenix, his in Chicago. Marco told her the truth about what he'd done, the people he'd worked for, the reasons he'd left. Sarah listened without judgment. Do you regret it? She asked one night. Parts of it. But if I hadn't done all that, I wouldn't have ended up here. So maybe it was necessary. Do you miss it? The money, the power? Marco thought about it honestly. Sometimes. But mostly I just feel relieved. Like I was carrying something heavy for years and finally put it down. 3 months passed. Marco got stronger, his hands calloused, his skin tanned. He made friends in town. He helped his neighbors when they needed it. He went to Danny's school play and cheered louder than anyone. One Saturday, Sarah asked him to help her with a complicated repair. A classic Mustang with transmission problems. They worked all day, side by side, taking apart the transmission and rebuilding it from scratch. At sunset, they tested it. The car ran perfectly. Sarah hooped and hugged him. Marco hugged her back, and for a moment, they stood there holding each other. When they pulled apart, something had changed between them. "Marco," she said, "I'm glad you stayed." "Me too. I mean it. When you first showed up, I thought you were just some rich guy slumming it for a while. But you're not. You're real. I'm trying to be." She kissed him. It was gentle and brief, and it made Marco's heart race. When she stepped back, she was smiling. "I've wanted to do that for a while," she said. Yeah. Danny ran out of the house. "Mom. Marco. Did you fix it?" "We fixed it," Sarah said. "Can we go for a drive?" They piled into the Mustang and drove down the highway, windows open, radio playing, desert flying past. Danny sat in back, singing along to the music. Sarah held Marco's hand. And Marco felt something he hadn't felt since he was a child: happiness. 6 months after Marco first broke down on that highway, he proposed to Sarah. They were in the workshop, covered in grease, arguing about the best way to replace a fuel pump. He just blurted it out. "Marry me." Sarah looked up. "What? Marry me. I love you. I love Danny. I want to build a life with you." "Marco, that's crazy, I know. But I've done the safe thing my whole life, and it made me miserable. This is right. I know it is." Sarah set down her wrench. "You really mean this? With everything I have?" She kissed him long and hard. When they broke apart, she was crying. "Yes. Of course, yes." They got married in the desert at sunset, just the 3 of them and a justice of the peace. Danny was the ring bearer. Sarah wore a simple white dress. Marco wore jeans and a clean shirt. It was perfect. Marco adopted Danny legally a year later. He taught the boy everything he knew about business and strategy. He helped him with homework and coached his little league team and tucked him in every night. He became the father he'd never had. The ranch promoted Marco to foreman when Jack retired. Marco hired good people and treated them fairly. He made the ranch more profitable without cutting corners or exploiting workers. He built a reputation as someone you could trust. Sarah's business grew. Word spread about the mechanic who could fix anything. People drove from 3 counties away to bring her their cars. She hired an assistant, then another. Marco helped her expand the workshop and buy better equipment. They built a new house together, bigger than the old one but still modest. They had another child, a daughter they named Grace. Danny became a teenager who still loved cars and now helped his mom in the workshop after school. He talked about going to MIT to study engineering. 5 years after Marco first broke down on that highway, he stood in his backyard watching Danny teach Grace how to change a tire. Sarah came out and handed him a beer. "What are you thinking about?" she said. "About how different everything is now. Good different. The best different." He put his arm around her. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if my car hadn't broken down that day?" "Sometimes. But I try not to dwell on it. We're here now. That's what matters. I used to think I had to be powerful to be safe. That money and connections were the only things that protected you. But I was wrong. What protects you? This. People who care about you. A place to belong. Work that means something." He looked at his family. "Love." Sarah leaned into him. "You've come a long way from the guy in the expensive shoes who didn't think I could fix his Ferrari. You fixed a lot more than my car that day. You fixed yourself. I just gave you a reason to try." They watched Danny and Grace together, the sun setting over the desert, painting everything gold. Marco thought about Vincent Terranova in Chicago and the life he'd left behind. It felt like a dream now, something that had happened to someone else. Danny called out, "Dad, can you help us with this?" Marco walked over. "What do you need?" "Show Grace how to use the jack. She's not getting it." Marco knelt next to his daughter. "Okay, sweetie. First thing you do is make sure the car is in park and the emergency brake is on. Then you find the jack point. That's this spot right here." Grace watched him carefully, her little face serious. She tried it herself, and Marco guided her hands, showing her the right technique. When the car lifted smoothly, she grinned. "I did it. You did. Good job." Sarah took a picture of them. Marco and the kids gathered around the car, all of them smiling. Later, she'd frame it and hang it in the living room, next to pictures of their wedding and Grace's birth and Danny's 8th grade graduation. That night, after the kids were in bed, Marco and Sarah sat on the porch. Stars filled the sky, more than anyone could count. The desert was quiet except for the wind and the distant howl of coyotes. "Do you ever regret leaving Chicago?" Sarah asked. "Never. Not once. Even though you gave up so much? I didn't give up anything that mattered. I traded one kind of wealth for another. And I got the better deal by far." Sarah took his hand. "I'm proud of you. Of who you've become. I'm proud of us. Of what we built together." They sat in comfortable silence. Marco thought about the morning he'd meet Vincent Terranova, how scared he'd been, how certain he was making a mistake. But he'd taken the leap anyway. He'd chosen love over fear. And it had changed everything. A shooting star streaked across the sky. Grace would have made a wish, but Marco didn't need to. He had everything he wanted right here. The next morning, Marco woke early and made breakfast for the family. Pancakes and bacon, Grace's favorite. She came running when she smelled it cooking. "Daddy, can I help?" "Sure, baby. You can flip the pancakes." She stood on a stool next to him, carefully turning each pancake with a spatula too big for her hands. Some of them broke, but she was so proud. Marco kissed the top of her head. Danny came downstairs with his backpack. "Big test today. Wish me luck." "You'll do great," Marco said. "You studied hard." "Thanks, Dad." The words still made Marco's heart swell. Dad. He was someone's dad. He mattered to these kids, and they mattered to him more than anything in the world. After breakfast, Marco drove Danny to school. They talked about the test and about Danny's plans for college. The kid was smart, smarter than Marco had ever been. He'd do great things. "Dad," Danny said as they pulled up to the school. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Why did you really come back that day?" "After your meeting." Marco had never told Danny the full story. He'd kept the details of his old life vague. But the boy was almost 16 now. He deserved the truth. "I was working for bad people," Marco said. "I owed them money and I paid them back. But I realized that if I stayed in that life, I'd never be happy. So I left. That must have been scary. Terrifying. They could have killed me. But you did it anyway." "Yeah. Because I met your mom and you, and I saw what a real life looked like. And I wanted that more than I wanted to be safe." Danny was quiet for a moment. "I'm glad you chose us." "Me too, kid. Me too." Danny got out of the car. Marco watched him walk into school, backpack slung over one shoulder, confident and strong. He saw so much of Sarah and the boy, and now maybe a little bit of himself too. The good parts, he hoped. Marco drove to the ranch and worked all day. He helped deliver a calf, repaired a water tank, trained a new hand. At lunch, he sat with the other workers and listened to their stories. They talked about their families, their dreams, their struggles. Marco realized he was part of a community now. These people knew him and accepted him. Jack's son, who'd taken over when Jack passed away last year, stopped by Marco's truck. "Hey Marco. Got a minute?" "Sure. What's up?" "I'm expanding the operation. Opening a second ranch about an hour north. I need someone to run it." "Okay. You want recommendations?" "I want you to do it." Marco blinked. "Me? You're the best foreman I've ever seen. You're fair with the hands, you know the work inside and out, and you solve problems without drama. I trust you." "That's wow. I'm honored." "So you'll do it?" "I need to talk to Sarah first. It would mean longer hours, more responsibility." "Of course. Take your time. But I hope you'll say yes." Marco drove home thinking about the offer. More money, more prestige, a chance to build something from scratch. A year ago, he would have jumped at it. But now he had to consider his family. He talked to Sarah that night after the kids went to bed. She listened carefully, asking questions. "What do you want to do?" she said. "I don't know. Part of me is excited. But part of me worries it will take me away from you and the kids too much. How much more time would it require? Maybe an extra hour or two a day. And I'd have to travel to the new ranch a few times a week." Sarah thought about it. "That's manageable. And it's a great opportunity. You think I should do it?" "I think you should do what feels right. But don't say no just because you're afraid. You've earned this, Marco. You've worked hard. You deserve to succeed." Marco pulled her close. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just didn't notice because you were too busy being stubborn." He laughed. "Fair point." Marco accepted the job. He threw himself into building the new ranch, hiring good people, setting up systems, making it profitable. It was hard work, but he loved it. He loved seeing something grow from nothing, loved knowing he was creating jobs and opportunities. Danny graduated high school with honors. He got accepted to MIT with a full scholarship. The whole family drove him to Boston, helped him move into his dorm, cried when they said goodbye. Marco hugged him tight. "I'm so proud of you," Marco said. "I couldn't have done it without you and Mom." "Yes, you could have. But I'm glad we got to help." Danny pulled back. "Dad, I need to tell you something. I know more about your past than you think. I overheard conversations. I pieced things together." Marco's stomach dropped. "Danny, it's okay. I'm not mad. I just want you to know that I understand. You came from a bad place and you changed. That takes courage. And it makes me respect you even more." Marco couldn't speak. He just hugged his son again, overwhelmed with love and gratitude. Grace was 10 now, and she wanted to be a veterinarian. She volunteered at a local animal shelter every weekend. Marco drove her there and back, listening to her talk about the dogs and cats she was helping. She had Sarah's big heart and Danny's quick mind. She was going to do amazing things. One Sunday, while Marco was waiting for Grace to finish her shift at the shelter, his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Hello, Marco Santino?" The voice was unfamiliar. Marco's old instincts kicked in. "Who is this?" "My name is FBI Special Agent Lisa Chin. I need to speak with you about Vincent Terranova." Marco's heart rate spiked. He stepped away from the shelter entrance, keeping his voice low. "I haven't had contact with Vincent in 6 years. I know. We've been monitoring you. You're clean. But Vincent isn't. We're building a case against him, and we need your testimony." "No. Mr. Santino, Vincent is a dangerous man. He's hurt a lot of people. You could help us put him away. I walked away from that life. I'm not going back, not even to testify. If you don't cooperate, we could charge you as an accessory to crimes you were involved in before you left. Then charge me. But I'm not testifying." There was a long silence. Finally, Agent Chin said, "Can we at least meet? Talk in person?" Marco thought about it. "Fine. But not here. And my lawyer will be present." They arranged to meet in Phoenix 2 days later. Marco drove there with Raymond Chin, his lawyer, who'd helped him navigate his exit from Chicago. They met Agent Chin in a coffee shop. She was younger than Marco expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I'm here. But I meant what I said. I'm not testifying. Let me show you something first." She opened a folder and slid photographs across the table. Marco saw bodies, crime scenes, victims. Young men who'd been tortured and killed. Families terrorized. Businesses burned to the ground. "Vincent did this?" Marco said quietly. "All of it. In the past 5 years, he's escalated. He used to be calculating, careful. Now he's reckless. More people are getting hurt." Marco looked at the photos and felt sick. He'd worked for this man. He'd taken orders from him. He'd helped build the empire that allowed this to happen. "If you testify," Agent Chin said, "you could be the key witness that puts him away for life. You know his operations, his methods, his network. You can connect the dots in ways no one else can. And if I testify, Vincent will come after me. After my family. We can protect you. Can you? Really? Vincent has people everywhere. You can't watch us 24 hours a day forever." Raymond leaned forward. "Marco, you need to think about this carefully. If you don't cooperate, the FBI could make your life very difficult. But if you do cooperate, you'll be putting your family at risk." Marco looked at the photos again. All those victims. All that pain. He thought about the man he used to be and the man he'd become. He thought about Danny and Grace and Sarah and the life they'd built together. "Give me a week," he said. "I need to talk to my wife." Agent Chin nodded. 1 week. Then I need an answer." Marco drove home in silence. Raymond tried to discuss strategy, but Marco barely heard him. He was thinking about choices and consequences and the fact that the past never really let you go. He told Sarah everything that night. He showed her the photos. He explained what the FBI wanted. Sarah listened without interrupting, her face pale. When he finished, she said, "What do you want to do?" "I don't know. If I testify, I might help stop Vincent. But I'd also put you and the kids in danger. And if you don't testify, more people might die. And I'd have to live with knowing I could have stopped it." Sarah took his hand. "This is your decision, Marco. I'll support you either way. But you need to be honest with yourself about what you can live with. Marco didn't sleep that night. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with the choice. At dawn, he got up and went outside. The desert was beautiful in the early light, peaceful and still. Danny came out and sat next to him. He was home for spring break. Mom told me about the FBI. Yeah. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Danny was quiet for a moment. You told me once that you came back here because you saw what a real life looked like. You wanted to be a better person. So what would that person do? Marco looked at his son. The right thing. Even if it's hard. Then you already know your answer. Marco called Agent Chen the next day. I'll testify. But I want witness protection for my family. Full relocation, new identities, everything. We can arrange that. And I want your personal guarantee that they'll be safe. You have it. The next 6 months were a nightmare. Marco testified in front of a grand jury. He provided evidence, documents, recordings he'd kept as insurance years ago. He gave the FBI everything they needed to build a case against Vincent and his organization. The trial was brutal. Vincent's lawyers attacked Marco's credibility, calling him a liar and a criminal. Vincent himself stared at Marco from the defense table, his eyes promising death. Marco stared back and didn't flinch. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they came back, the foreman read the verdict, guilty on all counts. Vincent Terranova was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Marco walked out of the courthouse with Agent Chen. It's over, she said. Not quite. Now we disappear. The FBI moved Marco's family to Montana. New names, new backgrounds, a new life. Sarah became Rachel. Marco became Michael. Danny was Daniel now, and Grace was Hope. They bought a small house near the mountains and started over. It was hard. Danny had to leave MIT. Grace had to leave her friends. Sarah had to abandon her business. They lost everything they'd built in Arizona. But they were together. They were safe. And slowly they built a new life. Sarah opened a new workshop. Marco found work at a local ranch. Danny transferred to a state school and continued his engineering degree. Grace made new friends and joined the track team. 1 year after the trial, Marco and Sarah sat on their new porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. It was different from the desert, but it was beautiful in its own way. Do you regret it? Sarah asked. Testifying. No. I did the right thing. It cost us a lot, but it was right. I'm proud of you. Even though I dragged you into this, you didn't drag me. I chose to be with you. All of you, including your past. We'll build a new life here just like we built one in Arizona. Marco kissed her. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. 2 years later, Agent Chen called. Vincent Terranova is dead. Heart attack in prison. Marco felt a weight lift from his shoulders. We're really safe now. You are. You can stop looking over your shoulder. Marco told his family that night. They cheered and cried and held each other. The nightmare was finally over. Danny graduated college and got a job at Tesla designing electric vehicle systems. Grace decided she wanted to be a doctor instead of a veterinarian. Sarah's business in Montana grew until she had to hire 3 assistants. Marco became ranch manager and turned the operation into one of the most profitable in the state. On Marco's 50th birthday, his family threw him a surprise party. Danny flew in from California. Grace drove up from college in Colorado. Friends from the ranch and town came. Sarah made his favorite meal. After everyone left, Marco stood in his backyard looking at the mountains. Sarah came out and wrapped her arms around him from behind. Happy birthday, old man. I'm not old. I'm distinguished. You're graying and you grunt when you stand up. You're old. Marco laughed. Fair enough. Any regrets? Marco thought about his life, the bad years and the good ones, the mistakes and the redemption. Not one. Everything I went through led me here. To you, to the kids, to this life. I wouldn't change a thing. Even the scary parts? Especially the scary parts. They taught me what matters. They stood together in the darkness, listening to the wind in the trees. Marco thought about the day his Ferrari broke down, about Danny pointing and saying his mom could fix it. That one moment had changed everything. Grace came outside. Dad, Danny wants to do a toast. They went inside. Danny stood with a glass of wine, smiling. I want to say something. Dad, when you came into our lives, I was 6 years old. I didn't have a father. Mom was doing her best, but we were struggling. And then you showed up with your broken car and your fancy shoes, and somehow you stayed. You became my dad, not because you had to, but because you wanted to. You taught me how to be a man, how to work hard, how to treat people with respect, how to do the right thing even when it's difficult. Everything good in my life comes from the example you set. So thank you for choosing us, for being the best father anyone could ask for. I love you, Dad. Marco couldn't speak. Tears ran down his face. He hugged Danny tight, then Grace, then Sarah. His family. His whole world. I'm the lucky one, Marco finally managed to say. You all saved me. You gave me a reason to be better. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to deserve that gift. They raised their glasses and toasted. To family. To second chances. To the unexpected moments that change everything. That night, Marco wrote a letter to his younger self. The man in the Ferrari with the broken radiator and the desperate plan. He wrote about choices and consequences, about courage and redemption, about finding home in the most unexpected places. He sealed it in an envelope and put it in his desk drawer, knowing he'd never send it, but needing to write it anyway. The moral of the story was simple. It's never too late to change. No matter how far down the wrong path you've gone, you can turn around. No matter how broken you think you are, someone can help you fix it. And sometimes the most important journeys start with a breakdown on a lonely highway and a little boy who says, "My mom can fix it." Because Sarah did fix it. She fixed Marco's car. But more importantly, she and Danny and Grace fixed his soul. They showed him that wealth isn't measured in money or power, but in love and family and the courage to start over. They taught him that the person you've been doesn't have to be the person you become. Marco fell asleep that night with Sarah in his arms, grateful for every choice that had led him here. He dreamed of deserts and highways and a small boy pointing at a broken Ferrari. He dreamed of second chances and new beginnings and the unexpected grace of ordinary life. And when he woke up the next morning, he thanked God for that radiator that blew on that highway all those years ago. Because sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you turns out to be the best thing that ever happened. If this story hit you the way it hit me, I need you to do 3 things right now. First, subscribe to this channel. Because every week I bring you stories that prove redemption is real and second chances do exist. Second, hit that like button if you believe people can change, no matter how far they've fallen. And third, drop a comment telling me, what's one decision you made that changed your life forever? I read every single comment, and your story might inspire someone else who's standing at their own crossroads right now. Remember, just like Marco's broken Ferrari, sometimes what looks like the worst moment of your life is actually the beginning of your best one. See you in the next story.